the final video of the week. This is probably the shortest one because I don't want to do spoilers or anything in this one because it's a new film. It's Greenland, starring Gerard Butler and Monica Barrekin. I think it's her name. I'm terrible at pronouncing her name. This one surprised the hell out of me because it's just a new film. The trailers were absolutely atrocious. The trailers were terrible. They made it look like the cheesiest cheese fest ever. And as you've seen some of Gerard Butler's films, like Geostorm or Gods of Egypt, they're wonderfully cheesy. I'm not. I love his cheesy films. They are genuinely bizarre in a way that I can get behind. I'm not mocking them. I could happily watch his cheese fest films, But this one is unusual because it looks like it sounds like a cheese fest, and then you see a film and it's not like that at all. It's fairly serious. I mean, originally it was meant to star Chris Evans, and he dropped out. It was meant to be directed by the guy who did District 13 Elysium. Or District 9. I mean, they dropped out, and we got the guys who made Angel Has Fallen, that third in a series film that was released last year. It wasn't very good, and it was like an okay one. So after seeing the previous film, Angel Has Fallen, which was fairly terrible, and but enjoyable, but terrible. I was expecting the worst. I was like, well, this is going to be terrible. This is going to be a total cheese fest. I saw the trailer and I thought, there's no way this is going to be good. I'm so looking forward to it. Then you saw the film and it was nothing like that at all. And it's like, the trailers really lie to you. The trailers are trying to sell you a film that's not this one. Like, at all. Like, all the effects in the film are in the trailer. They desperately try and make you think it's a big budget blowout. And it's not that at all. Basically, it's a very quiet film. Basically, what happens is Butler's this architect, this guy, he just builds tall buildings and structural engineer. He kind of makes sure everything's working in these buildings. And he's in true separation from his wife, and both of them are a bit wary of each other, but they've both got a son who's diabetic. So he goes back to the family home for the weekend for the birthday party, when it suddenly turns out that an asteroid was meant to pass, or a comet was meant to be passing by the Earth, was actually going to crash into it and destroy the planet of all life. And because Butler's a structural engineer, he gets a pass to go to Greenland, which is one of the various sites around the world where they've built these bunkers for emergencies in case anything like this happens, so that humanity will survive, even in a very diminished form. Most people will die, but at least some will survive and we can build again. And basically the film was him trying to get to this bunker, basically, because, of course, the news gets out instantly, so it's hell to get to the plane. The plane blows up, and anyway, because his son's diabetic, it means his son can't be let in to the bunker. And so it's them trying to survive, in this environment, thinking they're doomed because they're not going to leave their son behind. And also watch them get split apart and coming back together, and also dealing with the idea of what caused the marriage to have problems. Again, this sounds cliche. It sounds like a movie you've seen in a sci-fi channel movie. But the way it's done is actually very tasteful. It's got a decent script. The direction's actually pretty good, if a bit obvious in a couple of places. I mean, you're not watching this thinking it's a genius director at work. You're watching thinking it's a guy who wanted to make this film, and he put away all of his bad habits to follow the script. And he's very respectful to the script. It actually works. And also the actors are committed. Like Gerard Butler this is probably his best performance I've seen him do for a very long time. He has one fight scene in the film, and it's awkward as hell because his character doesn't know how to fight that well, which makes it work. It's a guy who obviously can be physical, but he's not trained in any way, so he can be very clumsy. Plus he managed to keep his Scottish accent, where I think he's meant to be Scottish, but even America for so long, Americanisms have crept in as well, so it's an accent that goes back and forward, but it makes sense for the character. His wife is very distant with him, but she obviously cares about the son. She cares about him as well. It's just like there's been issues. And it's a marriage that kind of works in the film because you like the actors and how they interact, and no one's behaving selfishly. Like as soon as there's a problem with them, and then as soon as the crisis hit their unit, and they're going to make sure they save the son, and that's it. And when things go wrong, the son's always their priority, and that makes it really realistic. And they try their best, and it just works because it's very simple character motivation, but they deliver it. And you find out more about the details of what the problems with the marriage was, and it's not a simplistic thing. It's mistakes were made on both sides. Although Butler was probably more to blame, but it's done in a very human format. It's not done as a judgmental thing. It's much more like people are flawed. That's it. And the situation needs to get into. They have to deal with human beings, some of whom behave really well, some of whom behave really erratically. You know, we see the good and bad in humanity in the film. It's not just one or the other. You see the flaws in the system, the flaws in the bureaucracy as it falls apart. You see people panicking, en masse. You also see kindness. And it's about the breakdown of society and how you survive that more than getting to Greenland. Yeah, so the thing is, it's about people who... It's the good side of humanity and the bad side, and it's how you survive throughout these difficulties, and that's how it's defined, really, is like survival, but survival with decency. So you see people do horrible things. There's a couple who give the mother and the son a lift and then kidnap the son because they realise he's got a little tag that will get him on one of the planes. And they want to survive. And it shows you how nasty, what cribbing normal people can turn into. You also see people who behave really well when they don't have to, including Butler and the wife, who do sacrifices for people that weren't necessary, but they do it anyway. Like Butler gets burnt, his hand gets burnt a lot because he saves a guy from a burning car. The guy probably dies later on, but he does it. With these things that happen, so there's a lot of grace notes as well as the complexity of human beings. They end up getting get told of this place that's going to Greenland. If you get to Canada, at a certain point you can get these planes to Greenland and try and get into the place. And that's what they aim for, but it's something that's very difficult to find to get to the place. And of course it's played up as a last minute thing, but within the context of this film, that's the only way it could be. And they don't overdo the over-editing thing. It's just much more like it's exhausting to try and get there. It's exhausting to get on the plane, try and convince people to take you on the plane. It's exhausting to have a crash very close to Greenland and stuff like that. And it's like, there's all these things that happen, but it's not played up as a mega thriller thing. It's like, these are things that happen in a bad situation and they just have to survive. They just have to try and show some decency to people. And that's what's good about the film. It's just about decency and the darkness of humanity in a tight spot, the good and the bad. Like, no one is all good, no one's all bad, and everybody makes mistakes. But it's just about human survival. I mean, the only thing I would say is the ending. I thought it worked till the last minute, really. It became a bit too saccharine in the end. But it's not too bad, it's just like, there's something to put a scene in you don't need, really. It's just almost to say, everything's going to be okay, type of thing, rather than, you don't need that, but I'm sure that was a compromise I had to make to get the film made. But the film itself is really well done. It's well directed, well acted, made a sci-fi movie, but it's a well done one. It feels like a sci-fi movie made in the 60s in Britain. It's that kind of feel of, kind of flawed characters. Situations that aren't action based but more character based, and more about people talking to each other than people having conversations rather than fighting each other. It's that kind of feel to it. So it's a really well done film. So I'd highly recommend it. It's coming available all over the place now, so you should be able to see it pretty soon. If you've got a VPN, I'm sure you can find it pretty much now. It's jumping from place to place, releases different times in different places. So I'm sure if you're inventive, you can find it. Right. I hope you enjoyed this. That's my last one for this week. I'll be back next week. I'll see you then.